Let's go ahead and hop into our first question of the day. The first question of the day comes from Steven at Stephen Cole 541 on Twitter. Steven asks, "Who do you think will have the biggest impact from the portal, as well as the 2023 recruiting class?" Let's start off with the transfer portal because I think that is, probably I'd say one of the easiest areas we can address. And then two players really come to mind, maybe even three, but I think without a doubt the biggest impact player from the transfer portal for Oregon right now is looking like it's going to be Jordan Birch. And the reason I say that is not only because there's a need, he's playing a position of need as an edge rusher, but there's just not a lot of guys that Oregon has on their roster or have had for that matter that bring what Jordan Birch brings. That's 6'6", 275 pounds, athletic, fast, playmaker. I want to say he had a pick six, really good closing speed. Someone with long arms that's going to be able to also be effective in the run game. And I think really helped take Oregon's pass rush to the next level. Because if you think about it, Oregon's pass rush doesn't lose a whole lot from the 2022 season. Obviously, you lose DJ Johnson, who moves on to the NFL draft, along with Noah Sewell. But for what it's worth, I thought Oregon should have blitzed Noah Sewell a whole lot more than they did. So if you look at it from that perspective, they're not losing a whole lot from a pass rushing standpoint with Noah. But Noah was a very, very skilled pass rusher. I thought that was one of his best strengths, when you could just cut it loose and let all 6'2", 6'3", 250 of him just go after the quarterback. And then you also lose Jordan Riley, who exhausts his collegiate eligibility. But a lot of that defensive front is coming back in terms of a production standpoint, right? You have Mace Funa coming back as well. He is one of the veteran edge rushers in this on this team. So I think that from the portal, I'm going to go with Jordan Birch. I think also that he was such a highly rated recruit, which is, kind of what makes him an easy answer. But I think a lot of people think that maybe there was a little bit of untapped potential there in terms of him not finding, that perfect role out in South Carolina. Now he's with Dan Lanning. Now he's with Tosh Lupoi. I think that Jordan Birch is, the kind of guy that Lanning and Tosh have wanted to get on this roster, but you just don't find them that easily at the high school ranking, from the high school ranks. And then even if you do find them in the transfer portal, it's not super often or super common that, you kind of have all those dominoes fall in just the right spot like they did with the timing, with the connections to Lanning, with the need on the roster, and a fairly easy track to a starting job. So I think that's why I want to talk about Jordan Birch, and I think he's probably going to be the biggest impact guy from the transfer portal. But there's a couple other guys that come to mind for me out of the transfer portal that I think are worthy of consideration, or at least a mention here. I think one of them has to be Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback who comes over from Alabama and the Crimson Tide out there in Tuscaloosa. I think he could have a big impact because Oregon just really doesn't have a lot of production at that position. You do return some experience with Triquez Bridges and Dante Manning. But I think that if you were to ask them, they probably think they would have had a bigger impact. They would have certainly liked to have had a bigger impact at the college level than they've had thus far. So that's not a slight to them. That's just, I think, a reality of the situation. So you bring in a guy like Kyrie Jackson, who's got size and speed, and I think you're hoping for him to be a plug and play starter for you from day one, like Christian Gonzalez was. And let's be honest, or let's just be frank. I feel like I'm saying let's be honest too much. Let's be frank. Christian Gonzalez, his addition went about as well as you could possibly have expected, right? If Kyrie Jackson can come in and give you something similar to what Christian Gonzalez did, then you will take that every day of the week. But I say all that to say that Christian Gonzalez was an absolute stud. You're seeing now that he's getting some very high first-round draft projections and a lot of praise within the NFL draft circles, and that's definitely well-deserved. So I think Kyrie Jackson is absolutely a name that you have to watch coming to Oregon out of the transfer portal from the University of Alabama. And another one I'm going to throw out there is a Johnny Cornelius, who transfers over from Rhode Island. And, he first kind of got on the radar, and I didn't know a whole lot about him. I was seeing that there was so much praise around this guy from Rhode Island. And I was thinking to myself, as I'm sure some other Duck fans were, Rhode Island? Really? That's not exactly a program, at least from my understanding, that is known for high level football. But I think that when the coaching staff was laying out the plan for Bo Nix to come back for another year, offensive line was a huge area that you had to address, because you're losing everybody on that starting, a lot of guys on that starting offensive line, excuse me. Marcus Harper comes back, Stephen Jones comes back, but now Adrian Clem's able to go over there, Dan Lanning's able to go over there and talk to Bo Nix like, hey, we just got arguably the top guy out of the transfer portal at offensive tackle. There really wasn't a lot of really top flight, top end offensive tackles in the transfer portal. He's going to come out to Eugene and block for you next year. Don't worry about all those veterans leaving. We're going to get some guys to come in there and help bolster the trenches for you. And then that's why you also have to mention the guy like Junior Angelau, who comes over from the University of Texas, another big addition, and a guy who's played a ton of football, even though he got banged up in the 2022 season. So those are some names out of the transfer portal that I think definitely warrant consideration. And then the second part of Steven's question, the biggest impact from the 2023 recruiting class. So we're talking the prep level. I think that, this is a really good class. There's a lot of ways you can go, a lot of places you can go here. But a couple guys come to mind, and I think one of the guys that comes to mind for me right off the bat is Dalen Austin, the cornerback from my neck of the woods at Long Beach Poly. Let me go ahead and see if I can bring up some highlights here on the fly, because Dalen Austin was an absolute stud for the Jackrabbits all year. Not a whole lot of film. A lot of times these guys, they post their film, and it's just game by game. So it makes it harder to use on a show like this when I want to show you, extensive video. But I'm going to go with Dalen Austin as someone that I think can be an instant impact guy at the next level. If you remember watching his commitment video, you had appearances from Dan Lanning. You have appearances from Rashad Wadood, who is now on the staff at Oregon, and he played a central role in this recruitment here. Let me go ahead and share the screen with you guys. So got Dalen's highlights here. This is from his junior season, but I still just wanted to get some tape out, like I was saying. But in that video, the coaching staff was talking about how this is really the sorry, I just removed my audio there. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. This is the kind of system that, a player like Dalen Austin is primed to thrive in. One that looks for corners that are long, athletic, can run. And I think Dalen Austin is definitely a guy that fits into that mold, right? He's a guy who runs track as well. You can see him here making an impact in the return game as well. So he brings added value there. He's a playmaker, a guy who can, make a play on the ball. And Lanning said, kind of one of those guys that you can rely on to leave him on an island and, just take away one half of the field, right? And that's essentially what they were able to rely on Christian Gonzalez for. So like I said, Kyrie Jackson is a guy that you can try to get some of that depth from, some of that big production from, but you have guys from this 2023 prep ranks that I think can also, that are also going to be hungry to come to Oregon and make an impact right from the jump. And Lanning talked about how from his time back at Georgia, he had Dalen Austin at a camp, and he was saying, I saw that guy and I got to have him. So I think that Dalen Austin, he's a late flip in this class from LSU. I know when I moved out to Long Beach, Dalen Austin was one of those recruits that I wanted to have my eye on. I was going to have my eye on throughout the 2022 season because of those connections that Oregon had to him. So I'll be honest, I was kind of kicking myself for not logging a prediction on Dalen Austin because I really thought that flip was one that was realistic and had been in the work for months. But the fact that they were able to flip him and sign him early is a tremendous win for Dan Lanning and this coaching staff, because from my interviews and conversations with Dalen, he was someone who wasn't really in a hurry with his recruitment to kind of finish things off. He told me he wanted to take all of his official visits. He wanted to go through the track season. And now, kind of from what I'm being told, it's looking like they're trying to get him enrolled early for spring football. So he's not going to be able to slide into this window in the winter, but he's a difference maker at cornerback for Oregon. So I think Dalen Austin is absolutely someone that could compete for playing time early at Oregon as one of the better recruits out of the state of California, out of the talent hotbed that is Southern California. Another name that you have to keep an eye on at cornerback is Cole Martin, who just recently won a state title with the Basha Bears out there in Chandler, an open division title in the state of Arizona, which is a state that it feels like every year I cover players from Arizona, their stock just keeps rising. So I was able to chop it up with Cole in San Antonio when I was over there for the Adidas All-American Bowl, and he's ready to go, and he's excited to be developed by his father, Demetrius Martin. Definitely a unique opportunity for him to play under his dad, but we're still just watching these highlights from Dalen Austin, who is just an absolute game breaker. You look at the speed, you look at the ball skills, the football IQ. It really just feels like Dalen Austin is a massive upgrade in this 2023 class. And I'm not saying he's going to be a day one starter by any means. We all know how difficult it is to do that. Even Mikael Wright, who is probably the corner that I can think of playing a lot of ball at Oregon as a young guy. We even saw how long it took him to kind of break through into a starting role. Thomas Graham played a lot as a freshman at Oregon, but that was more so out of necessity because they just didn't have a lot of depth there under that staff. And then Diamador Lenore, who's now on my San Francisco 49ers, played a lot of ball as a young guy at Oregon. But I think that I definitely have to throw Dalen Austin in there as someone who could definitely have a big impact as a freshman. And then another name, we got to go to the other side of the ball to talk about another guy that I think can make a big impact for the Ducks on offense. I'm going to go with Jurion Dickey. Jurion Dickey was an absolute stud at the high school level. He, at the high school level, as a senior, he transferred from Valley Christian in San Jose. So these are the most recent highlights that we have for him, extended highlights, I should say. I think he only played about 3 or 4 games at Menlo Atherton before an injury cut his season short. But Jurion Dickey is absolutely a guy I think can make a huge impact at Oregon as a freshman. And you look at the opportunity for playtime there, right? You lose Chase Cota, you lose Dante Thornton, 2 guys that were definitely getting some snaps. I think Cota obviously more than Thornton, right? But that was still a depth piece for you. Seven McGee over at Jackson State, Dante Thornton now over at Tennessee. So I think that Jurion Dickey is a guy that I am confident will step on campus at Oregon and make an immediate impact as a Duck. He is just that good. Number 2 wide receiver in the 2023 rankings, according to 247. Just behind Zachariah Branch, the Bishop Gorman wideout, who is headed to USC. I believe Dickey came in at number 14 or number 15 in the entire country. So he can just do it all. You see the speed, you see the route running, certainly has the physicality. He goes up there, wins those 50-50 balls. He's a guy that you can throw the ball over the middle to and feel confident that he's going to come down with it. I think that there's also some potential value there in the return game, just because he's a guy that you want to get the ball in his hands. So you're looking at him, Troy Franklin, 2 East Palo Alto guys. They're from the same hometown. Definitely a unique opportunity there. You see Jurion making some plays here on defense as well. He's not going to be enrolling early at Oregon. I think at least not right now in this window, like I talked about with Dalen Austin. This was an interesting recruitment to follow, because when I talked to Jurion in late October, he said he was still 100% with the Ducks, but there were still some schools that were recruiting him, and he was planning to take all 5 of his official visits. Fast forward to the early signing period, and Oregon is able to get him on campus right before the early signing period and get him to ink that national letter of intent. An absolutely massive win there with programs like Tennessee, Penn State, Texas A&M, all still recruiting him at the time of him signing his national letter of intent. And then you get his younger brother also in the fold from the junior college ranks out there in the Bay Area at offensive line. So he's a guy that I definitely want to learn some more about. But I think that to answer the last part of this question, this just went on for a while, but I got fired up about it. Jurion Dickey on offense, and then on defense, I think Dalen Austin is someone to watch at corner without a doubt.